I came into this world with the sound of ticking clocks and ringing phones all around me. Not literally, of course, but close enough. My father, Thomas Reed, was one of those old-school Wall Street brokers, the kind of man who could turn a phone call into a fortune. By the time I was 5, I already knew what the Dow Jones was. Other kids played with toy cars. I played with the calculators my dad left on the kitchen counter. We lived in an apartment high above Manhattan. From my bedroom window, I could see the towers of downtown glinting in the morning sun. Every day, I watched my father knot his tie, grab his leather briefcase, and head out the door like a soldier going to battle. He would always stop, bend down, and say, "Son, remember, this business is in your blood. One day, you'll be right there beside me." Back then, I didn't question it. How could I? To me, my father was larger than life. He carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed the world bent to his will. People respected him, envied him even. At family gatherings, my uncles would joke about the golden boy of Wall Street, and my father would smile, swirling his glass of scotch like a king on his throne. But here's the part no one saw. I didn't want any of it. Even as a kid, I dreamed of something else. Every summer, when school ended, my parents sent me to a camp upstate. That was the first time I ever saw real farmland. I remember running through tall grass, feeding goats, and watching the sun rise over rolling hills instead of skyscrapers. Something about it felt pure, unshakably real. I would lie awake at night, listening to the crickets outside my cabin, and think, this is where I belong, not down there in the city. Of course, I never told my father. To him, Wall Street wasn't just a career, it was a destiny. He believed he was passing down a torch, and I was supposed to carry it. If I had told him I wanted to farm, he probably would have laughed, or worse, looked disappointed. And disappointment from him was the one thing I couldn't bear. So I stayed quiet. I let him believe I was the heir to his kingdom, and maybe part of me wanted to believe it too. After all, who was I to argue with success? My father gave us everything, the apartment, the vacations, the security. He was proof that if you played the game right, you could win big. Still, late at night, when the city lights flickered outside my window and the sound of sirens drifted up from the streets, I would close my eyes and picture open fields, a red barn, the smell of fresh soil after rain. It was just a dream, fragile and distant, but it was mine. And yet, like every dreamer before me, I buried it. Because in my family, there was only one path, and I was already walking it, even before I had the chance to choose. I entered the world of Wall Street the way a soldier enters boot camp, not because I wanted to, but because it was the only life I knew. After college, my father wasted no time introducing me to the firm. It was his kingdom, and I was his prince, expected to inherit the throne. The first day I stepped onto the trading floor, I felt like I'd walked into another planet. The noise hit me first, phones ringing off the hook, men in suits shouting numbers across the room, the buzz of urgency so thick it made the air vibrate. Screens glowed everywhere, flashing red and green, streams of numbers flowing faster than I could read. "Get used to it," my father told me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "This is home now." But it didn't feel like home. It felt like chaos. My job in those early years was simple: shadow my father, take notes, and learn how deals were made. I watched him work magic on the phone, charming clients, talking fast, closing trades with the kind of confidence that made people trust him with millions. He had this way of making the impossible sound inevitable, and I tried to copy it. But no matter how hard I practiced, I always felt like an actor reading someone else's lines. At night, when the chaos finally ended, I would walk back to my apartment, tie loose, shoes scuffed, and collapse onto the couch. My hands shook sometimes from the stress. I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, is this really it? My whole life? Still, I couldn't quit. My father's pride meant everything to me. Every time I doubted myself, I remembered the way he introduced me around the office. This is my son, the future of Reed & Co. His eyes would shine when he said it, and in those moments, I convinced myself that maybe he was right. Maybe I just needed more time to grow into the role. But deep inside, the farm dream never went away. It sat quietly in the back of my mind, like a seed waiting for rain. Life has a way of ripping away the ground under you when you least expect it. For me, that moment came in 2005. My father had always been larger than life, a man who seemed unbreakable. He worked 16-hour days, drank his scotch neat, and laughed at the idea of slowing down. But one morning, I got a call that shattered everything. He was gone. Heart attack. Quick, final, merciless. I can still remember walking into his office that day. His chair was empty, but the desk was a mess of open files, notes scribbled in his handwriting, his phone lying there as if he'd just set it down. It felt impossible that the man who had filled every corner of my life with his voice and presence could just vanish.
Suddenly, I wasn't just his son anymore. I was the man expected to take his place. The firm, the clients, the employees, they all looked at me like I was supposed to carry on the Reed legacy. They spoke in cliches. He'd be proud of you, or it's your time now. But all I felt was hollow. I tried to step into his shoes. I put on the same confident mask he wore, but inside, I was falling apart. Every decision felt heavier, every mistake sharper. People expected me to be him, but how could I? I was barely holding myself together. The nights got darker after that. I'd sit in his chair, staring at the city skyline from his office, and wonder if I was strong enough, or if I was just pretending. And yet, I kept going, because what else could I do? He had built this empire, and I was the last Reed left to protect it. From 2005 to 2008, life was a blur of pressure. The markets wavered, the world economy trembled, and my father's firm sat squarely in the storm. Every day I woke up already exhausted, knowing that failure was just around the corner. Clients wanted impossible returns. Rivals circled like vultures. Inside, I felt like a fraud wearing a suit that didn't fit. I worked late nights, fueled by caffeine and fear. I drank too much to numb the anxiety. I snapped at people who didn't deserve it. And when I finally stumbled home, I would stare out the window at the glittering city lights and feel like they were mocking me. Everyone else seemed to be living, while I was drowning. But the cruelest part was this. The more I fought to hold everything together, the more it slipped through my fingers. The financial world was shifting, and I was too inexperienced, too uncertain to keep up. Every time I thought I had control, another crisis would erupt. Still, I told myself I had to keep going. For my father, for the Reed name, for the clients who still trusted me. But deep down, I knew I was on borrowed time. Then came the crash, the 2008 financial crisis. If you lived through it, you remember. If you didn't, it's hard to explain the panic that swept through Wall Street. It wasn't just numbers on screens. It was people's lives burning down in real time. I remember sitting at my desk, watching the markets plunge. Clients called, screaming at me, their life savings evaporating hour by hour. Colleagues packed boxes, escorted out by security, their faces pale and stunned. The trading floor, once deafening with noise, turned into a graveyard of whispers and broken men. I fought as hard as I could. I tried to save what was left of the firm, but every move felt like bailing water out of a sinking ship. The weight of it all crushed me until one morning I walked into the office and realized the fight was over. Reed & Co. was finished. The collapse wasn't just financial, it was personal. My father's legacy, my family's name, My own sense of worth, gone. In the space of months, I lost millions, lost trust, lost myself. And for the first time in my life, I had nothing. After the firm collapsed, I sold everything I could. The Manhattan apartment, the car, even pieces of my father's collection. Each sale felt like ripping away a part of him and of me. Friends disappeared. People who once shook my hand with admiration now avoided me on the street. That's Wall Street for you. One day, you're on top of the world. The next, you're invisible. I was broke, alone, exhausted. But in the middle of all that despair, a memory came back to me. A childhood dream. The farm. For years, I'd buried that dream under skyscrapers and stock tickers. But now, with nothing left to lose, it rose again. And suddenly, it didn't feel foolish anymore. It felt like survival. So, with the last of my savings, I made one final investment. Not in stocks, not in bonds, but in land. A small farm upstate, nothing fancy. Just soil, fields, and a beat-up house that smelled of dust and wood. When I stood there on the first morning, watching the sunrise spill over the fields, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Farming wasn't easy. In fact, it was the hardest work I'd ever done. My hands blistered, my back ached, and every mistake cost me dearly. Crops failed, animals got sick. More than once, I wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But here's the difference. Every failure was mine, honest. Out there in the fields, there were no fake smiles, no backroom deals, no ticking clocks breathing down my neck. Just me, the land, and the rhythm of nature. For the first time, the work I did felt real. And slowly, painfully, I built a new life. I often think about my father, about whether he would have understood the path I chose. Maybe he would have been disappointed, or maybe he would have respected that I found my own way. I'll never know. But what I do know is this: everything I lost on Wall Street gave me something greater out here. I measure success differently now, not in numbers, but in seasons. In the taste of vegetables I grew myself, in the quiet moments when the sun sets and the world slows down. Out here, I finally learned how to breathe. Today, I live simply. I work hard. I eat what I grow. I'm not rich, not in the way my father was, but I have enough. And more importantly, I have peace. Sometimes people ask if I regret it, leaving Wall Street behind. My answer is always no, because I stopped pretending. I found something real. If you're stuck in a life that doesn't feel like yours, listen, it's never too late to change. Money comes and goes, but peace, the kind you earn with your own hands, stays. And maybe that's the legacy my father wanted for me all along.